buckle your seatbelt. This is a fantastic text today. And it's one of these, I read it early last week and I couldn't hardly sleep all week long because I was so excited to come to church today. Now, first of all, let's do a little bit of background information before I plow into the interesting details here. First of all, this is in the Gospel of Luke. We've been reading Luke the whole year, and you know the normal Luke themes. One of the themes is in Luke chapter 9, Jesus sets his face to go toward Jerusalem. What does that mean? That means take out your map set. Where is Jesus from? Jesus of Nazareth, up here in Galilee. And where is Jerusalem? Down here. It's about 75 miles from Nazareth down here to Jerusalem. How do you get there? Well, you can go the direct route, and that's go through Samaria to get there, or many of the Jews, when they do a pilgrimage, cross over on the other side of the river and go down and then cut back again. Why? Samaria in the middle here is considered unholy, unclean. It's a toxic place for Jews to go. So Jesus the Jews would avoid going into this region. Okay, it would be like going from Columbia County to Putnam County, and you have to skip over Dutchess County to get on the way. So you cross over the river and go down the other side and come back this way. That's what's going on here. So in Luke, we know that Jesus is setting his face to go to Jerusalem. So this whole block of material in Luke are the adventures of Jesus while he's on the road. If you read Aristotle, he teaches, it's called the peripatetic method. Rather than you sitting down and the preacher teacher up here teaching you, we would walk through the countryside and I would talk and lecture as we walked along the way. There's something to that, rather than being a passive student listening. If you walk and move as you're, maybe like having headphones listening to a book, an audio book, that's called the peripatetic method. Jesus is doing Aristotle-like teaching here. He's walking through the countryside, teaching as he goes along the way. And there are different controversy stories. He tells parables. Here's a healing story. So that's the context. He's on the way to Jerusalem. Now, as he's going, he's on the border between Galilee and Samaria. Where's that? Again, you take out your map. Remember, when you read the Bible, get a good reference Bible with maps in the back and look it up. This is Galilee. This is Samaria. He's in this area. He's in the border zone, the borderland. Are there border disputes in politics? Yeah. The Turks are invading Syria right now and fighting with the Kurds. Why? It's a disputed border. This is in the news always. So this is a border territory. Just like we have wars and fights on borders now, it's a borderland. Okay? Now, before we get into it, let me talk a little bit about, let's talk about leprosy for a minute. Now, do we have a problem with leprosy in the world today? Here's the answer. Leprosy has been almost annihilated as a disease in really poor countries of the world, in tropical regions. Like in India, if you go up into the hinterlands, the tribal villages up in the country, they still have a problem with leprosy. But mostly leprosy has been annihilated. So it's hard for us to understand what's the problem with leprosy. Well, for thousands of years, leprosy was a curse on the human race, kind of like smallpox, right? It wipes out millions of people. And I did a little Google search on this, and it's fascinating, right? You've heard of James Carville before? He's like Hillary Clinton's advisor or something, right? James Carville. James Carville's grandfather was a postmaster in a town in Louisiana called Carville, Louisiana. And that's a place where, ready? It's the National Hansen's Disease Museum in Carville, Louisiana. That place was a leper colony, and it was a national leper colony. And it started like in the 1880s and 90s, and the Sisters of Charity ministered to lepers that came from all over the Caribbean and America to be treated there. Because back in those days, there was no treatment or no cure for leprosy. And this place, it closed in the 1980s, so it was around for almost 100 years. And now it's a museum, you can go there. And it turns out, like you'd think this would be a depressing place, like a leper colony. Well, no. They had like little electric scooters, and they would play baseball. They had their own baseball team. They had a big quality of life. They would have Mardi Gras parades and so on. So they tried to make the best of a bad situation. So why did it disappear? Well, it disappeared because of antibiotics. You know, if you have Lyme disease, you know, they want to hang an IV bag and it takes like months, you know, to get rid of it. Leprosy is caused by a bacteria, and it can be treated with like 6 months worth of antibiotics. So thank God for antibiotics, right? So leprosy. Now, in the ancient world, leprosy is a scourge. It's a horrible thing. Okay? Now, how big of a problem is it? Well, this is the Old Testament. In the Torah, what is the Torah? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. The first 5 books of the Bible. In the book of Leviticus, you want to read this. Leviticus 13 and 14. There are 52 verses in Leviticus 13 and 57 in Leviticus 14. It's all about leprosy. Chapter 13 deals with how do you diagnose leprosy. So if you have a spot in your skin, you have to report yourself to a priest, and there's a whole ritual that they go through, 7 days quarantine to see if it's really leprosy or not leprosy. And then if you have leprosy, that's the end of chapter 13. You have to separate yourself from the community. You're put in quarantine. Now, let me stop here for a minute. Is the disease bad?
Yeah.
All right, ready? The cure is worse than the disease. You know, you ever watch the pharmaceutical ads on TV? You can't escape it. You know, the ad itself is about maybe 15 seconds long, and 45 seconds of it is the side effects that happen when you take the drug. The side effects are, all right, well, in this case, the cure is almost worse than the disease. If you get leprosy, you're put in quarantine. What does that mean? What is the basic sociological unit for most of human history? We know this. Family, clan, tribe. Family, clan, tribe. What do you call a person in the ancient world that doesn't have a family, clan, and tribe? Dead. You literally cannot live by yourself in the ancient world. It's not safe. You're going to starve to death. You have to, the family, clan, tribe has to work together in order to survive. When you have leprosy, guess what? You have to live outside the camp. That means like outside the village. And what's outside the village? Well, that's the garbage dump. That's where you throw all the refuse. It's a place where there aren't protections. There's no wall around the village to protect you. Basically, you're put away. And in the book of Leviticus, it also describes what you have to do. You have to tear your garments with shreds. That is a signal to the people that are walking by that you have leprosy. It's like a uniform, sort of, torn, and you have to cover your face, because often your face is disfigured. And when people approach, you have to give them a warning. You have to say, leper, leper, leper. You have to announce that you have leprosy. Okay? And so what do these people do? Your friends and relatives might occasionally bring some food out by the edge of town and leave it on a rock or something, and then you would have to, walk up and get it, but you have to maintain that distance. So the separation, the distance, the being ostracized, being put in quarantine is worse than the disease itself. And how long does it take to kill you? Oh, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? You see, The Walking Dead, you ever see that show with zombies? That's what these people are like. They're like the Walking Dead of the ancient world, except they're still alive. It's a horrible, horrible thing. And it affects like your eyesight. It affects your vocal cords. Sometimes their ears, their nose fall off, their fingers are disfigured. It's a horrible, horrible thing. Your flesh literally decays away. So is leprosy a major problem? It's a huge problem. All right, with that background, ready? Let's take a look at the text. Jesus is on the borderland. He's between Galilee and Samaria, and guess what happens? He's about to enter a certain village. Stop. What village is it? A certain village. The village is not named. In other words, it could be your town. Okay? Jesus is coming into your town, and guess what? He's approached by 10 lepers. This is not an unusual sight in the ancient world. Remember, lepers have to live outside of the camp. So if that's Rhinebeck over here, the lepers would probably be right around where we are here, 4.5 miles out of town. As you approach the town, as he's approaching the town, there are 10 lepers. Now stop. How many lepers?
10.
Are the numbers in the Bible a mistake, or Luke just put it in there to fill space or something? No. Remember, whenever you hit a number in the Bible, stop and go, what number is it? It's the number 10. Well, the number 10 is very interesting. I made a list here, right? First of all, the number 10 is the number of completeness. Okay? It's a symbolic number. Noah, in the book of Genesis, there are 10 generations from Adam to Noah. 10 generations. So there's a complete set of generations. How many commandments are there in Exodus 20? 10 commandments. The Lord's Prayer has 10 clauses. What is a tithe in the Old Testament? 10%. How many plagues are there in Egypt?
10.
The 10 plagues. Right? The 10 plagues. In the book of Genesis, chapter 10, it's called the Table of the Nations. It's a snapshot of what the world looked like. There are 10 nations that are shown. Abraham is tested in his career, in his life. Guess how many times? 10 times. And Jesus says, I am 10 times. I am the bread of life. I am bread from heaven. I am the living bread. I am the true vine. I am the good shepherd. I am the way, the truth, and the life. 10 times he says, I am. The number 10 is a loaded number. It's not an arbitrary number. So the number 10, all right now. So 10 lepers approach him. And keeping their distance, why? Because they're ostracized. Remember in the book of Leviticus, chapter 13 to 14, you're required to keep a distance from people that don't have leprosy. Keeping a distance, they call out. And what did they say? Leper, leper, leper. That's what you're supposed to say. Is that what they said? No, they say, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. The Kyrie, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. Okay? Now, why would they say that? That word master is not Kyrios. In Greek, the word master is the word that the apostles use when they talk to Jesus. When strangers talk to Jesus, they say, teacher, we have a question for you. When his disciples call on Jesus or talk to him, they say, Master, we have a question for you. These lepers, they consider themselves apostles. They use like an intimate word, master, when they call on Jesus. They don't say leper, leper, leper. That's you're proclaiming your separation. Instead, they're using a word of intimate connection. Beautiful, beautiful. Now, when Jesus saw this, stop. When Jesus what?
Saw it.
Saw this. Do we see? No, we don't. We go to the city, don't we? What do you do when you go to the city? There's some homeless guy there. What do? You don't look at him. Don't make eye contact. Right? You sort of walk around him. Do we have a homeless problem? Yes, Seattle. Homeless problem in Los Angeles. Do we look at him? No, we don't look at him. Right? It's disgusting. You don't look at these people. They ruin your day. So you can try to get away from them. Jesus, however, looked and he sees the lepers. That's amazing to me. Jesus knows the human condition. He knows that we've fallen short of what God wants us to do. He sees our screwed up lives. He knows that you're a wreck and you're a mess. He sees you, and you know what? He loves you anyway. Is a leper someone who's easy to love? Oh, they're hideous. Look at them. They smell. It's disgusting. It makes me sick. Jesus looks at them. He sees them. And he sees their need. What does he say? And he talks to them. Stop. Why does we talk to them? We don't see people in need and distress, and we don't talk to them, certainly. We just keep going on because our lives are so important. We're busy. We don't want to deal with this stuff. Jesus sees them, and he talks to them. And he says to them, what? I'll pray for you. Is that what he says? No. He gives them an action plan. He really helps them. He says, go. Stop. Are they allowed to go? No. You're supposed to be in quarantine. You have to live by the edge of the camp. That's your assigned area over there. It's the over by the dump. That's the leper zone. Go and do what? Show yourself to the priest. What does that mean? Leviticus 13 and 14. Leviticus 14 is a long protocol, 57 verses on what to do. You go, you show yourself to the priest, and after 7 days, they put you in observation. After 7 days more, you proclaim clean, you get new clothes, a new garment, and you sacrifice a lamb. What do you mean? Without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sins. Jesus is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. When you recover from leprosy, when you're proclaimed clean, you offer a sacrifice to God, a blood sacrifice to show your gratitude and your thanks. Go and show yourself to the priest. The priests are the public health nurses of the day. They don't have the Dutchess County Health Department, and they don't have, certifications for things. So you have to go to the temple and the priest and get proclaimed clean before you can be reacclimated into society. Now, is being healed of leprosy a rare thing? Basically, there's only twice in the entire Bible. One story, Moses has a sister named Mary, and she was giving Moses an attitude, and guess what? God gave her leprosy, and God healed the leprosy after she learned her lesson. That's back in Genesis or Exodus. And how about, and the other story is the first reading today that Bobby read in Second Kings. Naaman, who's he? He's a Syrian general, a warlord, and he has leprosy. And they take a Jewish girl captive, and the Jewish girl says to Naaman's wife, there's a guy that can heal you back in Israel. So he does. He goes, he dunks himself in the water, follows the break, and he gets healed. So there's only, being healed of leprosy is like it's not a thing that it's a common thing in the Bible. So what is Jesus doing? He's doing a very rare thing here. And did he heal one? No, he healed 10. What do you mean? There's one person healed in the Old Testament, in Naaman, the Syrian warlord. Well, Jesus is 10 times better than the Old Testament. He heals 10. Amazing, right? And how does he do it? Go and show yourself. And on their way, they're made clean. Now, again, this is a 3-hour lecture. In the Old Testament, when you have leprosy, you're considered unclean. Remember, there's holy and profane. The temple is holy. People that are outside the temple are profane. Holy, profane. When you are holy, like a priest, profane people are on the outside. People that have leprosy, it's a visible manifestation of what uncleanness would look like. Okay? Unclean. Extremely important. So as they go along, they're made clean. They're healed, in other words. Now, let me stop for a minute. How did Jesus do this miracle? We spit on the ground and made some mud. He rubbed it, or he did maybe like a war dance, like a rain dance, like Native Americans or something, or he took some herbs and threw it up in the air and did incantations or something. No, he says, go and show yourself to the priest. You're supposed to say, at this point, who is this guy? You're supposed to say this. Who is he? Go ahead and say, who is he?
Who is he?
I'm glad you asked that question. I'll tell you who he is. He's the second person of the Holy Trinity. He's God. Well, how do you know he's God? What's the first line of the Bible? For those of you that have never heard it before, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word was God, the Word was with God. What does that mean? Jesus is the Word, the second member of the Holy Trinity, who spoke the cosmos into creation. He created the heaven and the earth. We're Christians. We believe that. He's not just some dude that happened to walk along the border between Samaria and Galilee. He is God in the flesh. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld His glory. When you hear a story like this, we're so used to hearing this stuff that it goes one ear and out the other. You're supposed to go, what do you mean? He didn't touch the guy? He didn't spit on the ground? He didn't do anything? No, he said, go and show yourself. His Word healed these people. That is an awesome thing. His Word healed. His Word, that's it. His Word did it. It's unbelievable, right? And as they go, they're made clean. Now, we can go home now and be pretty happy, What a great sermon today. We all learned about Jesus, that He's the second member of the Trinity, and His Word heals, and leprosy is a real problem. Here's the most important part of the story. Don't get fixated on how did He do it, the healing stuff. No. Here's the true miracle of this story. Okay? So, one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back. And he praised God in a loud voice. First of all, how do you say loud voice in Greek? Megaphone. Megaphone. Now, it passes right by us, doesn't it? I don't get the point. When you get leprosy, it affects your eyesight, but it also rocks away your vocal cords. Typically, people with leprosy, they talk like this, like they can't talk. The fact that he's shouting in a loud voice means even his vocal cords are restored. You got this? Now, it's one thing to say, you're blind, now you can see. Okay, that's pretty good. But leprosy, like your fingers fall off, your vocal cords are rotted away, your nose falls off, and it's restored back to the way it was when you were born. Think about that. In a loud voice, they're shouting, megaphone. They're rejoicing to God in a loud voice. That is a sign that they're healed. It's not just a fake thing. It isn't like we'll put some putty in there and make it look like they're healed. We'll trick these stupid people that are watching. No, they're really healed. On the inside, they're shouting praises to God. And on the way, they're made clean. And now, ready? What did they do? The one guy of the 10 came back, and he falls on his face at Jesus' feet and thanked him. Now, again, we're so used to this. We come to Sunday school, we like Jesus and all that stuff. If you're a Greek person or a Jewish person reading this 2,000 years ago, you would say, stop right here. It's gone too far. Why? Jews know the first commandment. What is the first commandment? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. So Jews are monotheistic and they worship only God. They do not worship the creation. A Jew would never fall down on his feet and worship another human being. You don't do this. It's anathema. If you're a Jewish reader here the first 2,000 years ago, you would be horrified at what happened here. You would say, what? And what else is going on? Does Jesus say, stop right here? Oh, no. I'm just a teacher and a prophet. You shouldn't be worshiping me. In the book of Acts, when the Greeks, the barbarians, start worshiping Paul and Barnabas as Zeus and Hermes come down to earth, Paul and Barnabas say, stop. No, we're just servants of the one true God. Don't worship us, worship God alone. Jesus doesn't do that. He lets the guy worship him and thank him. That's pretty neat. Why did they crucify Jesus anyway? Because he let people do this. He's the Son of God. He permitted this man to worship him. It's amazing, right? Again, there's stuff going on here that we have to be aware of. Now, ready? Again, we can leave now. It would be fine. Guess what? One ultimate kick in the teeth before you leave town. What is that? Ready? He was I can't even say it. A Samaritan. Ugh, disgusting. Why is that? The Jews and Samaritans hate each other. For like a week, 2 weeks maybe? No. Over 750 years of hatred. It started back in 722 BC. That's when the Assyrians come around the Fertile Crescent and they carry away the what? Northern 10 tribes off the pages of history. 10 tribes are gone. And what did the Assyrians do? They're like Nazis of the 8th century. They take tribes from over this end of the world and resettle them, and they intermarry with the poorest of the poor of the 10 tribes that are left behind. So you have like a population of mutts. You know, like Jim Rapoli, right? No, you have this population of mutts, right? And the Jews hate them because the Samaritans claim, well, we're descendants of Joseph and Jacob, and the one true place to worship God is Mount Gerizim right over here. And we have the Torah. We only use the Torah. We don't use the rest of the Old Testament, and we have the correct interpretation of it. So what are they? They're kind of like Jews, except they're not. And you know, the most bitter conflicts in history are not when you have two completely separate religions or cultures, when they're like a cousin. That's when you end up with the American Civil War, because they're sort of like us, but they're not like us. And that's when you get brother against brother stuff going on. That's what this is. For how many years? 750 years of racial and ethnic strife, ethnic cleansing, fighting, struggling. It's horrible, right? So, you've heard of Pontius Pilate before, haven't you? Mm-hmm. Who is he? The Roman governor who's there from 26 to 36 AD. This is around 33 AD. Pontius Pilate loses his job in 36 AD. Why is that? He sent Roman troopers, legionnaires, up to Mount Gerizim, and the Samaritans were trying to start an uprising. They had a guy who thought they were supposed to be the Samaritan Messiah, and they were going to lead an army of revolt, and Pontius Pilate slaughtered all the Samaritans on Mount Gerizim. And it was so outrageous that even the emperor, the Caesar, was offended at this, and Pontius Pilate was recalled back to Rome, and he disappears off the pages of history. So the Romans keep peace between the Samaritans and the Jews so they don't kill each other, right? So what is this? The one person that came back as a Samaritan? You're supposed to be offended. You're supposed to, this is it, I quit. I'm never coming back to church again. I've had it with this. That's how offensive this is. Now, do you read the Gospel of Luke? Yes, we've been reading it all year. I've been nagging it, right? What else did Luke write? The book of Acts. Luke is a second-generation Christian who's a Gentile, and he takes a special interest in how the gospel got spread from Jerusalem to Samaria to Asia Minor, and ultimately makes it all the way to Rome. So if you read the book of Acts, it starts in Jerusalem and ends in Rome. How did that happen? Luke is interested in how people are converted, and it's not just for members of the tribe of Judah. The gospel is for everyone, including the Samaritans. So Luke has 3 stories of Samaritans in his gospel, in Luke, and then several more in the book of Acts. Of course, you go up a little bit. Luke chapter 9 is the parable of the what? The Good Samaritan? The parable of the Good Samaritan. How is that possible? You can't have a Good Samaritan. It's an oxymoron, right? If you're good, you're a Jew. If you're evil, you're a Samaritan. You can't have a Good Samaritan. The parable of the Good Samaritan, the hero of the story is the Samaritan who does the right thing and takes care of the poor man who's left for dead. Here, the person who's the hero of the story is a Samaritan. If you were reading this 2,000 years ago, you would be so offended and disgusted. What is wrong with this Jesus guy? Right? And so what does Jesus do then? He says, we're not 10 made clean, the complete number, the number 10. Well, no, that's the first question. But where are the other 9? That's a pretty good question, isn't it? What's the number 9? The number 9 in the Bible is the number of crisis and judgment. Isn't that interesting? So by our unbelief and ingratitude, we're being judged by God. Now stop. Is that something that we should maybe think a little bit about in our society? Yeah, I think it probably is. What's the date? It's 2019. I thank God on a daily basis that I'm alive in 2019. One of the courses I'm teaching, I'm teaching a class on American history. I'm doing one on European history right now. Why did our ancestors come here? Our ancestors came here because in Europe in the 16th and 17th century, there were things like the 30 Years' War, where 1/3 of the population of Germany was killed in a world, it's really the First World War. And there were famines, there was starvation, there was oppression. If you're a royal personage, it's a great time to be alive, but most of us are peasants and serfs. We came over here because the opportunities over there were non-existent. We came over here with a new hope and a new dream. And when they got here, what happened? You've heard of Jamestown, 1607? Something like 80% of the people that went to Jamestown died in the first year or two. They starved to death, diseases, Indian attacks, all kinds of stuff. But yet it was better to be here than to be over there because Europe was worse than it is now. What is the average life expectancy? This is an old date. It's an old number. 74 for men, 78 for women. I think it's higher than that now. I think it's like 80 right now. Right? Why is that? In 1900, the average life expectancy for a man was 49. 49. What do we have? Oh, things like bypass surgery. My father had bypass surgery like 8 years ago. He'd be dead right now. He's alive now, and he's doing really well. Think of cancer treatments. Think of antibiotics. Do you know what your life would be like without antibiotics? Half of you would be dead right now. I'd probably be dead too. And do we have heat? Yes, Mrs. Isaacs, she enjoys heat. Like August 19th, the temperature drops to like 67 degrees. Oh, I'm chilly, put the heat on, right? Well, did they have heat and air conditioning? We complain bitterly. Oh, I can't believe it. It's like 85 degrees, the air conditioning, I'm dying here. They didn't have air conditioning. That's like a 1950s invention. I went out to Oklahoma. How would you like to be in Oklahoma during the Great Depression where it's 110 degrees and no air conditioning? How did they do it? I have no idea. Yeah, lemonade. Yeah. You make a big thing of lemonade and then stick your head in it, right? No, but I'm saying we're so ungrateful. We're so ungrateful, right? And so ingratitude, our nation has been blessed in so many ways you can't even, oh, poor me, I'm oppressed. Oh, the world's going to end in 12 years. Oh, I can't believe it. You've never had it so good, right? The unemployment rate is 3.5%. During America's Great Depression, right? 1920, 1941, the unemployment rate is 25% among male head of household. 11 years. So like your father wouldn't have worked for 11 years. Would that sort of put a little damper on your life? I think that probably would. And we're ungrateful. We're like a bunch of spoiled snots, spoiled brats, We're like the 9. And maybe every once in a while you should sit there and go, I should make a list why I'm grateful to be alive right now. God has blessed us. He blesses our family. He blesses our church. It's an amazing thing. So so the 9 aren't here. They're not grateful. But the one that came back, right? He's grateful. He gets it. It isn't the healing that's the big whoop-de-doo. It's the fact that, what did Jesus say? He says, get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well. That word, made you well, puts too much emphasis on the health aspect of this. The word is really, you've been saved. You've been delivered. You've been delivered. You've been saved. Right? Is that the thing? It's not that you have health, right? Your physical problems, that's a minor thing in the big scheme of things. In the eternal view, are you delivered? Are you saved? The Samaritan gets it. He knows who Jesus is. And our problem is not a medical problem. Our problem is obviously not an economic problem. We have so much money now, it's unbelievable. Our problem is a spiritual problem, isn't it? It always boils down to that. We're spiritually bankrupt. That's a problem with our country. We have so much money and so much bounty and so much blessing. We're ungrateful, we're bitter, we're fighting each other all the time. Because it's a spiritual problem. We have to get our lives together. We have to focus on the essential thing, which is focus on Christ. The Samaritan, he gets it. And what does Jesus say? I'm sorry, you're a Samaritan, you can't be part of it. No. In the Gospel of Luke is interested in the cosmopolitan nature of the Christian religion. In other words, anyone who calls in the name of the Lord will be saved. Men, women, slaves, rich people, poor people, everybody across the board is welcome to be a Christian. You're not a Christian because of your family, clan, tribe, your race, your nationality, whatever. You're a Christian because you're saved by grace through faith in Christ. You call on Him and you will be saved. That's the message of today's sermon. Again, this is an amazing and astonishing story. The 10 lepers. Be like the one that came back and said thank you to God. Amen.